Thank you, Janet, for that introduction. And thank you, Congressman Perlmutter, for joining me today. I'm going to jump right into the first question, if you're okay with that.
Jump right ahead.
All right. As you know, Lockheed Martin has partnered with NASA on robotic Mars missions since the very first Viking landing in 1976. So Mars, you could say, is truly in our DNA. Why do you feel it's important to send humans to Mars now?
Well, because I think exploration is in everybody's DNA. It is in Americans' DNA. It's in human DNA. We want to know what's on the other side of the hill. We want to know what's across the river. And I can tell you the desire of humans, the desire of Americans to know what's on Mars, to have our astronauts explore Mars is something I know I've been interested in for 50 years. And many, many Americans have that same desire to see what's up there. And we want to put people up there.
Yeah, that is exciting, isn't it? So tell me about your time frame. What are you thinking for a time frame?
I thank you for asking that question. I was just grabbing my bumper sticker, which really is the time frame that we've been considering in the Science Committee, and we've been talking to NASA about for a number of years now. So about 4 years ago, we had a conversation. We had a hearing in the Science Committee, and I serve on it with a number of other folks from all over the country, where we asked the NASA folks, we said, look, we were to the moon 50 years ago. When are we going to get to Mars? And they said, well, 2033 gives us, a long-term kind of window. And it's the time when the orbits of Mars and the Earth are close and saves a lot of time, cuts off months of space travel, which really improves the safety for our astronauts. So we thought there would be lead time. We're working hard to get our astronauts to Mars by 2033. And that's the schedule I'm looking at. And if the folks out there have ever seen one of the Science Committee hearings, I'm always bringing that up, and I'm always pushing NASA to move forward with this as quickly and safely and as efficiently as they can.
Well, that sounds great. And I'm wondering, how many of those bumper stickers do you have, and do you hand them out regularly?
Well, I actually have 2 here with me today, but we do hand them out regularly. I actually saw somebody with one of these bumper stickers on. It's a car, and it's not somebody in my family. So I'm pretty excited about it. And I think, folks, we've had TV shows that say 2033. There's been a lot of excitement and interest, but it's something that, is still, 12 years off. But on the other hand, that's going to be upon us very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I just know there's excitement, there's enthusiasm, and I certainly feel it.
That's great. So I'm curious, how does Colorado play in NASA's Mars exploration?
It's got a huge role. Colorado's role is really outsized for the number of people we have in our state. And clearly Colorado has a big aerospace presence, and we're very proud of that. Whether it's with major companies like Lockheed Martin or Ball or Sierra Nevada, but many small contractors and vendors who have very specialized, components related to the mission to Mars and just aerospace and space missions generally. So, we have just this big community here, and the Orion project, which is the spacecraft that will help get our astronauts to Mars, is being developed, manufactured, refined here in Colorado. And I can tell you, as a Coloradan, I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the activity that we have around space here in our state.
And our team is very proud of what they're doing for Orion. So thank you for that.
Well, the Lockheed Martin team at Waterton Canyon, and really there are other places around the city that Lockheed has some really excellent staff, from scientists to technicians to engineers to, healthcare people, because much of what we've got to deal with is keeping our astronauts from getting sick on these long trips, and to make sure that we do this, even though there's going to be substantial risk in a journey like this, we want to minimize that as much as we can.
Of course. Human safety is always our number one priority. So, and thank you for saying that. So you mentioned Apollo, and we've been back to the moon. The Artemis program is going to take us back to the moon. Can you tell me a little bit about how you see the lunar activities on the surface and in cislunar space contributing to the mission of taking humans back to Mars, rather?
I think it plays a big piece. And, for a while, as we were talking to NASA 5 years ago, what is it? Are we going to go straight to Mars? Are we going to go to the moon as kind of a stepping stone? There was a lot of conversation about that. And it was determined, Jim Bridenstine, who served on the science committee with me, a good friend of mine who was the administrator at NASA. I mean, over the last few years, we just said the Artemis program is how we're going to approach that. We're going to the moon. We're going to get ourselves back in space. And really, we've been at the space station, and we've done robotics, and you all have played a role in much of that. But to get our astronauts back to the moon, learn how to operate on the moon, and then the next step, a really big step, is to get to Mars.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for the International Space Station, there's direct communications to the ground, right? And the moon's going to be a little farther away, but it's a great way to practice. Mars, there won't be that round trip communications back and forth. And so knowing how to operate in that kind of environment seems like it's better to do it closer to Earth. So the moon sounds like a good stepping stone for that.
It is, and it will really help us get our feet, wet again, and get our feet back on the ground being the moon at that point. And, this is a big deal. This is something that, in my opinion, is going to be a public-private partnership, and it's going to require international partners as well. It's that big of a venture. And I think it's going to require that kind of international and corporate talent, along with the brilliant minds and people we have that work for the United States that really run NASA. And this is very exciting. 12 years is going to pass by very quickly. If we can get our astronauts to Mars by 2033, what a milestone.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. And thank you for the comments about international partners. I know on the Orion program, the European Space Agency is a critical part of the Orion spacecraft as well. So I'm glad to hear you see international partnerships going forward.
Well, recently, I was down, before COVID, I was down in Australia. And Australia has a budding space program. And they played a role because they're on the other side of the world, and they've always been part of our communications network to really follow our astronauts as they've circled the globe or gone to the space station or whatever. But I see Japan, even though there's a lot of competition with China these days, we've got to be open to partnerships, because this is going to require a lot of talent and a lot of effort to get astronauts to Mars.
No, I agree. I would also expand it to say it's going to take all of industry, and in some cases, maybe industries that aren't in the space domain today that we think might play a role in us being able to explore on the surface. So with that, it brings me to a question. This past spring, we announced a partnership with General Motors to build mobile rovers on the surface of the moon, which also could be used on Mars. So we're looking to really kind of energize the high efficiency battery technology and as a role model for how we could electrify vehicles here on Earth. Do you see other ways where the technologies that we'll develop to go to Mars could benefit us here on Earth?
Yeah, there are all sorts of ways, whether it's in foods or healthcare. I mean, there are so many things that we're working on. COVID has caused a lot of effort on the healthcare front. That will be part of it. This food supply chain. But I think one of the areas that's going to be very interesting are computers. And as we move. We've got tremendous sort of blockchain capabilities and supercomputers, but we really are moving into a quantum computing era. And that is going to be fascinating for all of us. And it will be fascinating what role it plays in our space program.
Yeah, I could see the use of computers and the power of that technology really helping when you go on to Mars. We do a lot with digital twins and digital transformation at Lockheed Martin, as others do as well. And when you're traveling that far away from Earth, the astronauts are going to have to self-sustain themselves. So I can imagine that you would want that compute platform to be on board with them to help them to determine what failures they might see or identify issues before they actually happen on board, and then be able to recover from that very quickly, almost like a digital assistant that we might use here at home. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the computer, the ever growing ability of our computers to think, the artificial intelligence, and then you couple that with the quantum computing breakthroughs, it's the sky's the limit, as they say. I think same applies to propulsion. And, there are a number of things, SLS and others are developing, for propulsion systems. And as the course of this 12 years goes by, we may see some new propulsion systems coming into play. And obviously, habitats. There is a request by NASA right now to have people live for a year or two, similar to that habitat that was in Arizona years ago. But how will people survive on the surface of the moon, on the surface of Mars? What kinds of horticulture, like in the movie The Martian, how are we going to provide foodstuffs for folks? Those are all very interesting, big questions that have to be answered as we move forward with this mission.
Yeah. You mentioned propulsion, if I could pull on that thread a little bit. When we talk about our Mars base camp concept over the last 5 years, and we've thought about how to get astronauts to Mars as quickly as possible, we see nuclear power being a part of that, and nuclear propulsion. What do you see as America's role in leading in space nuclear?
So I serve with a gentleman named Bill Foster from the suburbs of Chicago. He's also a nuclear physicist, and he worked at the Fermi Labs. And this is something that is really of interest to him. And I can't get into the physics of all of it, but it's he wants to use low-grade uranium or low-grade type of propulsion, and believes that really is an answer for getting us to other places in our solar system quicker. And so I look to Bill for guidance on these things. I look to Lockheed Martin. I look to Ball. I look to the scientists and engineers, and we get so many great, talented individuals coming and talking to our committee, to try to learn and know more about these propulsion systems. I mean, we're going to have some hearings on this recent thing that was done. I don't know if it was an Argonne or Fermi, where all of a sudden they did kind of a cold fusion, a laser fusion that released just unbelievable amounts of energy. And so there are things happening all around us. I mean, we've had kind of a tough year with COVID, with a number of different things, but the breakthroughs, the science, the things that are going on around us, and a lot of them driven by our space program and our aerospace industry, it's remarkable.
Yeah, no, it is. It's incredible. Thanks. I appreciate that comment. So, you're a member of Congress, and we're really fortunate that human spaceflight has always had really strong bipartisan support. How do you see the alignment of continuing the momentum of bringing humanity to the moon and then on to Mars, those goals? Do you still see that strong bipartisan support?
I do. I feel that there's very strong support in the Congress. I think Administrator Nelson will continue that from the NASA standpoint. I think that President Biden and Kamala Harris are supporters of all we're doing. There is some tension from time to time among individual members of Congress, and it doesn't matter. You could be of the same party. It doesn't have to be a bipartisan issue. It could be intra-party. You have a little difference of opinion, but generally, we've really the Democrats and the Republicans and have worked together. We've seen increased budgets to NASA. We've seen continued support for Orion, for SLS, for different components of our space program. And I think many people are also understanding that human space flight, it's not a zero-sum game, that we can do scientific research. We can go to other places. We can go to Jupiter. We can, send our Voyager spacecraft, to another solar system someplace.
Yeah.
But we realize, and I think folks are saying, well, just if we add this, we got to subtract that. We're doing a much better job moving the whole space program forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you. So as we do that and we have the support of Congress, how does Congress play in helping us achieve our Moon to Mars goals? And do you have any recommendations for NASA and their stakeholders?
Well, they need somebody who will be, persistent. I had a buddy who he described himself as a woodpecker. He just kept pecking in and made known where he wanted to see things go. And I think we need to have a number of individuals supportive of a major journey, a major venture like the mission to Mars to continue, making themselves known, making that project known, and that it's a priority. I think we've got a big supporter in Matt Cartwright, who is a congressman from Pennsylvania, who's in charge of the science, space, and I don't know what they're called, Science, Commerce, and Justice subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee. And we've got friends over on the Senate side. And so you need to have that. And individuals in communities need to speak up to their members of Congress, to their elected officials about what they'd like to see, what they'd like to see America do. We've got a lot to take care of in our country, but we also are explorers and researchers, and we want to keep that up.
Yeah, and I think human exploration and science exploration is very inspirational, right? And this is a great time to inspire the world, I think. So thanks.
Well, I think the space program and a mission of that has been on people's minds since the beginning of time, going to another planet, going back to the moon, going back to another planet, is something that allows all of humanity to sort of embrace. Even as we're coming out of a pandemic, which has been, really hard and depressing and physically tough on so many people around the globe, something that's inspirational and aspirational, like this program, this mission to Mars, really gets people to think beyond themselves, beyond today. And I think that's good for all of us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you. So there's been a lot of discussion about, I'll say, commercializing space exploration and exploring the space economy and things like that. As you think about it, what's your view of how NASA should play a role in that, and how the U.S. government in total should play in that endeavor as we pursue taking humans to Mars?
So, I think we got to talk about sort of the magnitude of the risk, if you will, and what is a national venture versus what could be more of an individual company or a partnership venture of companies. And we talk about low Earth orbit. We talk about some of the things we've seen recently with different shots, up into low Earth orbit and back down. And those, I really do support the commercialization in that. As we start getting farther from the Earth, going to the moon, going to Mars, there becomes much more of a national interest and a national risk that comes to play. And I think that's when NASA really, can be sort of a traffic cop in the low Earth orbit as businesses want to commercialize space, whether it's for imaging or, taking people to the space station or just for a tourist ride or whatever it might be. But as we go farther, NASA's role as the leader of the effort becomes greater and greater. And so they play a big role, obviously, as sort of the people in command or in, the basic charge of going back to the moon and certainly, in my opinion, to Mars. Now, there are certain entrepreneurs and individuals who think that they can go to Mars themselves. And, God bless them if they can. But I think it's going to be a big risk. It's going to take all of us to be able to accomplish that feat. It's that dangerous. It's that costly. It's that kind of thing that requires an effort by a lot of different talented people, talented companies and countries.
Yeah, and I imagine academia will even play a role in some of that going forward.
Clearly, academia is going to be in the middle of all of this because we need our best and brightest helping on something like this, whether it's the computers or it's the biosphere or it's the propulsion system or whatever it may be. I mean, this is something that it's all hands on deck when it comes to engineering and technology and training and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at Lockheed Martin, we're really excited about the upcoming Artemis 1 launch. It's a key milestone in us putting the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. And it'll show the Orion spacecraft going out farther around the moon than even Apollo had traveled. Can you share some of your personal thoughts on the Artemis program and this particular mission and its significance?
Well, I want, the Artemis program, like I said, is really just the key to then doing the thing that I've been talking about so much, which is getting us to Mars. And so it's a very important step. I'll admit, just as you asked me those questions, I kind of got butterflies in my stomach because we want it to succeed. We want it to work. I wanted to move forward as quickly as possible. There's there are those who would say, no, we need to wait a couple more years. Then there's somebody like me who gets pretty impatient. I mean, we've got to do this so that it's, again, safe, knowing that no matter how safe we make it, there's still risks, but as safe as we can possibly engineer this and use science to the best of our ability. And I'd like us to keep moving forward as quickly as possible. And those will be the debates that we have in Congress. Those will be some of the debates that we have with the administration.
Congressman Perlmutter, thank you so much for your time today. And more importantly, thank you for your passion on taking humanity back to Mars and for your support.
Well, Lisa, you're very kind to have me. I just appreciate being part of the summit. I know this is going to be presented to all the people. And I just say thanks. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. It's going to require a lot of passion, a lot of ambition, and a lot of technology and effort. So just thanks to the summit for putting this on.
Great. Well said. Thank you again.